What if I told you that some of the richest companies in the world barely pay taxes? Sounds illegal, right? But it's not. In fact, the biggest corporations on the planet have mastered a system where they can generate billions in profit, move money across countries, borrow against their own assets, and still report surprisingly low taxable income. And here's the real twist. While most people are working hard, saving money, and trying to grow their income, corporations are quietly playing an entirely different game. A game where profit is not just about selling products. A game where debt is not a burden, but a powerful tool. A game where ownership matters more than income. Think about this for a second. When you earn money, you get taxed first. Then you spend what's left. But corporations, they earn money, spend it strategically, reduce their taxable income, and then pay taxes on what remains, which is often much smaller than what they actually made. That's not luck. That's design. And it gets even deeper. Some corporations don't even rely heavily on profits to grow. Instead, they focus on increasing their valuation, their assets, and their market power. Because in the world of corporate wealth, cash flow is just one piece of the puzzle. The real game is about control. Control over assets, control over debt, control over how money flows, and how it is reported. And once you understand this, something clicks. You realize that the financial rules most people follow are not the same rules corporations play by. And that's exactly why the gap between everyday earners and massive corporations keeps growing wider every single year. But here's the important part. These strategies are not hidden behind secret vaults. They're not illegal tricks reserved for billionaires only. They are legal, structured, and openly used. The problem is, most people were simply never taught how this system works, so, in this video, we're going to break it all down. You'll discover how corporations actually build wealth, how they use debt, taxes, and assets to their advantage, and why understanding this could completely change the way you think about money forever. Because once you see the system, you can never unsee it. Here's where most people get it completely wrong. We've been taught to believe that wealth is simple: work hard, earn money, save a portion of it, invest what's left, and over time, you'll become financially secure. Sounds logical, right? But this model is built for individuals, not for corporations, and that's the misunderstanding. Most people think corporations make money the same way they do. They imagine a company sells products, earns revenue, subtracts expenses, and whatever is left is profit. Then they assume that profit is the main driver of wealth. But that's only a small part of the story, because corporations are not just trying to make money. They are trying to control how money is seen. Let me explain. When an individual earns income, there's very little flexibility. Your salary is reported, taxes are calculated, and you pay a fixed portion based on your income bracket. But corporations, they operate in a completely different environment. They can decide when to recognize income. They can decide where to allocate expenses. They can even decide which country their profits appear in. So while it may look like a company made billions, on paper, it can show much less debt, and that's perfectly legal. Now, here's where the misunderstanding gets even deeper. Most people believe debt is dangerous. You've probably heard it your whole life. Stay out of debt. Debt will trap you. Debt is risky. And for individuals, that's often true, but corporations don't see debt the same way to them. Debt is leverage. It's a tool that allows them to expand faster, invest more aggressively, and reduce their taxable income at the same time. So while individuals avoid debt to stay safe, corporations use debt to get ahead. And then, there's the biggest misconception of all. That profit equals wealth. This is where many people get completely misled, because corporations don't always prioritize profit. In fact, some of the biggest companies in the world have gone years showing little to no profit, yet their valuation kept skyrocketing. Why? Because they were building assets. They were capturing markets. They were increasing their long-term value. And that's the real game. Not just earning money, but building something that grows beyond income. So the problem isn't that people aren't working hard, the problem is they're playing a completely different game, with a completely different set of rules. And until you understand how corporations actually think about money, you'll always feel like you're doing everything right, but still falling behind. So how do corporations actually build massive wealth? Let's break it down in the simplest way possible. At the core, corporations focus on three powerful levers: assets, debt, and taxes. Once you understand how these three work together, everything starts to make sense. First, assets. Most people focus on income. Corporations focus on what they own. Assets are anything that can generate future value. This could be factories, technology, real estate, intellectual property, or even entire companies. Instead of asking, "How much money did we make this year?" corporations often ask, "What did we acquire or build that will make us more powerful tomorrow?" Because assets don't just generate income, they also increase the overall value of the company. And here's the key insight: when a company's assets grow, its valuation grows. And when valuation grows, the company becomes more powerful, even without increasing profits immediately. Now, let's move to the second lever: debt. This is where things flip completely compared to how most people think. For individuals, debt is usually tied to consumption, credit cards, personal loans, things that lose value. But corporations use debt to acquire assets. Imagine this: a company borrows money at a relatively low interest rate. Then it uses that money to invest in something that generates higher returns. The difference between those two numbers becomes profit. But it gets even better: the interest they pay on that. Debt is often tax-deductible, so not only are they using borrowed money to grow faster, they're also reducing the amount of tax they owe. That's leverage. And this is one of the biggest secrets of corporate wealth. They are not afraid of debt because they use it strategically. Now the third lever, and arguably the most powerful: tax optimization. Corporations don't just accept taxes as a fixed outcome, they plan around them. They structure their operations across different regions. They take advantage of legal deductions. They reinvest profits into the business. All of this reduces taxable income. Let's simplify it. If a company earns a large amount of money but reinvests most of it back into growth, its profit on paper becomes smaller. And since taxes are based on that reported profit, they end up paying less. Completely legal, completely strategic. Now here's where all three levers connect. A corporation can use debt to acquire assets. Those assets increase long-term value. The cost of debt reduces taxable income, and reinvestment further lowers taxes. This creates a powerful cycle. More assets gives more growth, gives more leverage, gives less tax, gives repeat. And over time, this cycle compounds. That's how corporations scale from millions to billions to trillions, not just by working harder, but by structuring money smarter. And once you see this system clearly, you realize something important. Corporations don't chase money the way individuals do. They build systems that make money flow toward them efficiently, repeatedly, and strategically. And that's the real secret. Let's look at a real-world example to see how all of this actually plays out. Consider Amazon. Today, it's one of the most powerful companies in the world. But what's fascinating is how it built that power. For many years, Amazon reported very little profit. In fact, there were long periods where it looked like the company was barely making money at all. Now, if you were thinking like an average investor or employee, you might say, "Why isn't this company profitable? Isn't that a problem?" But that's where corporate strategy comes in. Amazon wasn't focused on maximizing short-term profit. It was focused on building assets and dominance. Instead of keeping profits high, it reinvested almost everything back into the business. It built massive warehouses. It expanded its logistics network. It developed new technologies. And most importantly, it created Amazon Web Services, which would later become one of its biggest profit engines. So on paper, profits stayed low, but in reality, the company was becoming stronger every single year. Now let's connect this to what we discussed earlier. Assets. Amazon was aggressively acquiring and building them. Warehouses, delivery systems, cloud infrastructure, all long-term value creators. Debt. Like many large corporations, Amazon used financing and capital strategically to fuel expansion instead of slowing down growth to stay safe. Taxes. Because it reinvested heavily, its taxable income remained relatively low compared to the actual scale of its operations. So while the company was generating billions in revenue, it legally minimized how much profit appeared on paper. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. As Amazon kept growing its assets and expanding its reach, its valuation skyrocketed. Investors weren't just looking at profits, they were looking at future potential, and that pushed the company's value into the hundreds of billions, and eventually over $1 trillion. So even without showing massive profits early on, Amazon became one of the richest companies in the world, and the founder, Jeff Bezos, didn't rely on a salary to build his wealth. Most of his net worth came from owning shares in the company. As the company's value increased, so did his wealth. This perfectly shows the real game. It's not just about earning money, it's about owning and scaling something that grows in value over time. Amazon didn't win by playing the short-term profit game. It won by using assets, leverage, and smart financial structuring to dominate long-term. And this exact strategy, in different forms, is used by many of the world's biggest corporations. So what should you actually take away from all of this? The biggest lesson is this: wealth is not built by income alone. Most people spend their entire lives trying to earn more money, higher salary, more hours, extra side hustles. But corporations don't think like that. They focus on ownership, leverage, and systems. Instead of asking, how can I earn more? They ask, what can I own that will grow in value? Instead of avoiding debt completely, they learn how to use it carefully to accelerate growth. Instead of paying maximum taxes without thinking, they structure their finances in a way that legally minimizes them. And most importantly, they think long-term. This is where the real shift happens, because once you start thinking like this, your perspective on money changes. You stop chasing quick income and start focusing on building assets. You stop fearing every form of debt and start understanding the difference between bad debt and strategic debt. You stop thinking in months and start thinking in years, even decades now. This doesn't mean you need to become a corporation, but it does mean you can learn from how they play the game, because the rules of money are the same. They're just applied differently, and the people who understand this early are the ones who quietly build real, lasting wealth over time. If you want to understand how money actually works, not just how most people think it works, then you're in the right place, because on this channel, The Geeky Investor, we break down the strategies that the wealthy, corporations, and top investors use in a way that actually makes sense. No complicated jargon, no confusing theories, just clear, powerful ideas that can change how you see money forever. So, if you found this valuable, make sure you hit subscribe, because the more you understand the system, the better you can position yourself inside it, and trust me, once you start thinking like this, there's no going back.